Friends, welcome. I'm thrilled today to have Georgina Woudstra joining us for a brief conversation about teams, leadership, team coaching, and the intersection of all those things. I've known Georgina for a few years and have been thrilled to learn with her and from her and her colleagues at the Team Coaching Studio in Winchester, United Kingdom. She's the co-founder and principal there. She's also the author of Mastering the Art of Team Coaching, which is coming out in second edition at the end of March. Um, and one of the things I've always been struck by with Georgina is for decades now that she brings that heart of a practitioner to this work and also in helping other coaches learn this work. I think so many people bring the brain or the mind or the cognitive side, and of course that's a particularly important part of teams and team coaching, but the heart of a coach, of a practitioner who lives this and can kind of escape the antiseptic realm of just purely thinking about models and teams and effectiveness, but rather into the heart of the work we do. I just admired that for so long and how those transformational experiences take place one-on-one or with teams. And she does that in her own coaching practice. Um, and so a lot of what we geek out on, Georgina and I, is just the honing of our craft as society changes, as organizations change, as leadership models change, as teams struggle and thrive. The craft that we engage in is so important. So we got a few moments in her very busy day to talk about this. Georgina, welcome. I'm thrilled to have you here.
Thank you, Bennett, and what an introduction. And I want to say likewise. I discovered you through your book, The Team Discovered, and which I thought was one of the best books I've read on working with teams because it's a practitioner approach and it's not loaded with stuff you do to a team. It's how you support a team through a transformational journey. So we look each other eye to eye as practitioner to practitioner to share and learn from each other, and I really celebrate that.
My only wish is we could do it more. Like I wish
Well,
we
we
were
can.
like we can. And how we've all learned through COVID and other things how to
Yeah.
do this virtually as we are today. I just wish there was an easy way for me to get to Winchester and come and hang out with you and all the folks in the UK and Europe who are taking your courses and learning your approaches. And we'll find other ways to connect. There's no doubt.
Great. Yeah, like the sound of that, Bennett.
Yeah. So we wanted to dive in and just spend a minute or two reflecting on what are you and I seeing as we're out there coaching
Yeah.
teams? We'll talk about team coaching in a moment. And by, that's almost a nonsense question because every team's different and the trends are so different in the different cultures and organizations and societies. But I do think that there are changes going on. And for better or for worse, I think leaders and teams are finding new ways to thrive or strive or survive. And I'd love to hear your thoughts when you look at your clients and the people you talk to about teams and leaders. What are you seeing out there?
Well, Bennett, I think what I'm seeing are themes that have been running for a number of years. When you hear about the VUCA world and the amount of complexity, the amount of change. But I think what is coloring that, at least, with clients that I see in the UK, is business is hard here.
Mhm.
People are finding it hard to see hope. It all looks quite austere. Growth is hard to come by. Clients and organizations are not achieving the same sort of hockey stick curve growth that they were not so long ago and they thought would come back, and it's not come back in the same way. So they're having to be way more creative about how they generate success, about how they keep hope alive in the organization, how they develop a culture that can handle that ambiguity, and not least how they can co-regulate expectations between a board or investors and an organization. So it's hard graft because sometimes the rewards of feeling successful seem more distant to teams, and that's quite challenging for people in senior leadership roles who've got an organization looking to them going, where are we going with all this? And that's not unilateral, Ben, because I work with coaches all over the globe in our team coach training programs, and there's definitely parts of the world that are thriving more and feeling more optimistic than I see through the lens of coaches in the UK. Yeah. How about you?
Thanks for asking. I think there's such a wide range of experiences right now. Some clients I'm talking to are they see just immense potential for growth, and they're just trying to grow as fast and as hard as they can. Certain industries, certain opportunities, and I think others are really sensing a lack of stability, like minimally sufficient stability, so that they can make sound investments over time and know we're in it together for the long haul. And not that in some Pollyanna way it was different 12 months ago or 2 years ago, but um, maybe it's the diversity and intensity of the experience of the leadership teams I'm working with is just getting more and more distributed and extreme. Like the highs are getting higher and the lows are getting lower. And I think where a lot of the I think team members continue to search for a place where they can be authentic. I think a lot of team leaders are looking for a missing sense of accountability.
Yeah.
And I think teams and leaders as little mini ecosystems are really struggling to adapt to rapidly changing conditions. And those three components, how can we be authentic? How can we be accountable? And how can we adapt? Are a daily challenge, which
Yeah.
absolutely we can do, but it's just a challenge.
Yeah. And one of those most rapidly changing environmental conditions is the fast advancement of AI and all that offers and all the challenges that presents. And I'm sure it's very challenging as a team leader, as team members, to process what the opportunity of AI is and what some of the risks are, and how to make sense of it, how to integrate that into their organizations. Yeah.
I I deeply believe that. I attended a training this past weekend in AI, artificial intelligence, and the presenter said, and he was quoting someone else. I don't have the person's name in front of me, but he said, by the end of the decade, there will only be two types of companies: those using AI for almost everything, and those that don't exist anymore. It will be such a profound, you won't be able to be in business, in almost any business, without using it for almost everything you do. And we don't know the implications of this. Not even the more malevolent side of AI, like, is it going to wake up and take over the world? I don't know. That's way, way beyond what I could ever imagine. But just how individual companies will have to adapt if they want to stay in business, and the impact of that on employees and leaders, I think we have no clues yet how that will take shape.
Yeah. Extraordinary times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you used the word hope a moment ago, and I always feel like with leaders and teams, I often encounter them early in a coaching project where they often feel hopeless, like they've lost a sense that they have a sense of agency, they can make changes, they own their experience. And it's not uncommon. I mean, as humans, we're fully capable of feeling hopeless at a moment.
Yeah.
But hope is the thing that has to precede momentum. Like, I think often teams and leaders, they're like, we want to be back on that hockey stick curve you mentioned. We have to drive, we have to hit these Q4 numbers, and their brows get furrowed and they want to get to momentum and change. And I think we all miss that step of, like, the gentle moment when hope creeps in, where we pause and we sit back and our eyes open up and say, like, we might do a checkout with a team and we say, well, how are you feeling? And you start to hear hopeful is a word that they haven't. It's like it's their lived experience that they're feeling these new seeds of hope. And that's often the gift coaches like you and I can help them find. How are you experiencing that sense of hope, either in yourself or in the coaches that you coach or in the clients you work with?
One of the things about us human beings is we affect each other. And what that means in a simple way is I feel affected by your presence at a one-to-one level. I imagine you're affected by mine. So there's this extraordinary affective quality of being in a team that's sometimes diluted by being virtual teams who don't really have that contact, or where virtual team meetings have been turned into rapid fire processes where they're not really pausing. They're getting tasks done, but they're not really pausing to have an effect on each other. So that whole essence of co-regulation, I think, is huge and not really talked about or explored in teams. Just the same way that if you walk into your house and you've been out, you come in and you've got a family member who's mad, bad, ugly, growling in the corner, or just silent, you feel that effect, whether anything is said or not. We have the same thing. I think hope resides in the same place. I think we affect each other with hope. And hope can be built and generated, expanded through a more collective vision. Just to say a little more on that, I know this has been written about and talked about so many times, it feels almost cliched to repeat it. And yet I still experience a vast number of teams when I first encounter them. The individual team member is not looking at the team and what the team hope to co-experience, to co-create, to co-celebrate. They're looking at their division, their silo, their department, their function, and they often see their role not as a team member, as a colleague of the people around the table, but they see they've got to defend the team that they lead. So they're not really in the team, the leadership team, let's say, that they're in the meeting with. They're there fighting for a different team. And I think that's very confusing as a team member. And I think that also gets in the way of some collective sense of hope, that sense that we're working in an integrated way towards something larger than ourselves. And it's quite extraordinary how many teams don't really have a collective identity around what they stand for. What is the amazing opportunity that's in their hands, and how are they going to approach that opportunity in an integrated way together, collectively? So there's a practical element to my answer, as in the grounded experience of day-to-day living in organizations. But I think there's that lack of recognition of our collective affect and the impact of that on hope. How about you?
Yeah, I so resonate with what you said. You use the word identity, which that's my experience too, quite often with the collection of individuals who have been told they're a team, but in no way have yet incorporated any deeper sense of an identity of a team. And so they can't see their interdependence. They don't see a need to collaborate. They tend to not like their experiences often. And it's often, I'll sometimes ask a leader or a team member, like, what's the name of this team? What's this team called?
Yeah.
And then they might come up with an answer like, well, it's Peter's team. And I'm like, is it? Peter owns this team? Who's the customer? Who receives the benefit of the work this team does? Well, finance does. Oh. So does this team's name or identity have any grounding in who you serve, or is it still just Peter's team? And it's so easy in large, complex, matrixed organizations in particular to just lose the sense that we are actually something in and of ourselves. We exist. We have agency. We have an identity that not only encourages us to work on our team, but helps us see our collective responsibility to work on this team. Like, we own our lived experience and our effectiveness. Nobody can work on this but us. And that seems to be that jumping off point where if we can get there, that's when that's, I think, some of the preconditions for that hope to take root.
Yeah.
And then we have that agency. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's more like, well, then why don't we take a few small first steps to find out what we own and what we can change?
So you believe that hope comes through having a collective identity and a collective sense of who we're there to serve.
Yes, of placing ourselves in our context,
Yeah.
and um, to the degree we can,
Yeah.
owning our impact in this context with each other and with a broader context with the people around us, the organizations below us, the people who consume what we do. Um, I think that's true in my own life and maybe in yours. Like there are moments, certainly in my life, where I've felt like this is hopeless.
Yeah.
And it's a transitory state. It's a feeling that can come and go, and that
Yeah.
feeling will drive different behaviors and thoughts. Um, and it's a perfectly human thing. I think when we share it among like 10 or 12 people, that sense of hopelessness can set in. And I would love to help them find a hopefulness or a
Okay.
helpfulness rather
So it
than a
has
hopelessness.
a
Yeah.
compound effect, really, isn't it? Whether it's a hopelessness or a hopefulness, there's a collective effect. So the other thing that I'm thinking about is that, classic team development, a lot of it actually has focused on developing the individual in the system. Let's do, I don't know, Myers-Briggs or management insights and look at our colors and look at, so we understand each other better. It's useful stuff for generating understanding, but it's developing the parts, or perhaps the sum of the parts, but it's not really seeing the team as capable of having an impact beyond the sum of its parts. And the classic team development where we're just looking at personality and preferences of the individual, or maybe building a team charter, doesn't go far enough in terms of having a transformational impact. It's one of the building blocks, but it's not the whole journey. And then when you think about the world, like we were talking about being more complex, I think one of the things that is really important that teams are aware of and develop is their uh, is, is is their awareness of how they make meaning,
Mm.
their awareness of how they broaden their perspectives, rather than just live within their own individualized framework of making meaning within inside themselves. How do we how do we take on broader perspectives? How do we look more broadly in order to come to more coherent answers and more useful answers, more effective answers for the organization? And that seems to be somewhat missing in many organizations. Is the limitation is let's understand each individual's personality preferences. Let's build a team charter. Let's get on and do some work and make decisions. Good stuff. But what if the team's maturity of thinking needs to grow? If their capacity needs to grow? And I think that's where there's, at least teams who are working in really complex environments and dealing with complex challenges, there's a lot of maturity needed. Yeah. What about you? Where does that take you to?
Well, the first place that took me to was I often think about teams, and I don't mean this literally, but sometimes this is easier to think about as families because we can relate to if I have a partner or a spouse or children, or and if I asked you how your family is doing, Georgine, how's your family doing? And you said, well, my daughter won a track and field event, and my son, he just, well, he's traveling through Europe,
Yeah.
and my partner is doing this. And you just told me about all the individuals in your family. I don't think I've heard anything about your family.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard about if you support each other or if you enjoy a family meal on Sundays together, because that's the place you ask great questions. Or, if you're as a family rallying to support mom as she's aging, or like I haven't heard anything about the nature of the connective tissue in you and how you find yourselves as a family. And I think society drives us to think very in a particularistic or individual manner. It's
Yeah.
about individual achievement. And now you can get a lot done as highly competent individuals, but it doesn't in any way make you part of a small social ecosystem, a family
Yeah.
that can love and thrive and connect. and I'm not saying teams need to love, and it's the metaphor only goes so far. Um, but those of us who do see the connections, we probably find ourselves in this team coaching kind of work. And I think there is that transformation comes in helping people find those neurons. Maybe we are connected. Maybe that's terrifying to think that we are connected. And maybe there's things to grieve when we realize that we're not actually taking advantage of all the things we could be doing if we were making that meaning and finding our way to productive
Yeah.
effectiveness and outcomes. And you think about going through a 30 or 40-year career, never having found those connections, having found that meaning, having um, maybe people choose that, but to me that feels sad.
Yeah.
And I think the joy of that exploration, that's where we can find the hope and maybe finding the tendrils of connection, and then we can make meaning together.
That was such a powerful metaphor for me, Bennett. I loved that moment in this conversation today where you use the illustration of talking about a family. I'd not thought of it like that before. And I think, wow, yeah. But where that takes me to is um, the normalizing that sense of, our lens is on the individual in the system
Yeah.
without greater awareness of the need to be more integrated, more coherent across a team or a system. So yeah, it's a very, very powerful way of bringing that picture to life. And
This pa-
because this thinking is relatively new, I know people have been talking about systems and ecosystems and living systems for a while, but these things take a long time to shift organizational cultures, to get really into a culture and support that change. And I'm just excited about opportunities to advance that, to pick up the pace a bit, and for organizational development to think a bit beyond developing the individual of the system and thinking how we can think about the development of the family and then the family within the wider system, the wider culture. And
yeah, and how families interact with each other.
yeah,
Let's you and I build a list of 3 bullet points we would encourage teams, leaders, and coaches to keep in mind as the world continues to unfold around us. And you and I haven't done this, we're going to make it up on the
no,
spot. We think about these people and these complex adaptive systems
yeah.
who are no doubt every day trying their best. Um, what's
Yeah.
one phrase of encouragement that comes to mind for you, and then I'll try to think of one too. One
Well,
action.
I think there are several things that have come out of our conversation today that I'm inspired by. One is is the profound importance of hope and the role it plays in harnessing energy of a collective identity. And if we want change to happen, there has to be hope, and there has to be some collective sense of what the meaningful impact that team's going to have.
Have hope. That's our
Have
first.
hope.
Have
Yeah.
hope. I want to throw one in.
Yeah.
Own your stuff. It's you. It's your capabilities. You're showing up every day on the Zoom call, on a Teams call, in a meeting, in a conference room. And if you own your stuff, then you'll own your emotional state and your behaviors and the impact, and how your intention comes to life. If you don't own your stuff, we will sleepwalk through this,
Yeah.
and miss opportunities to have micro dosed transformation effects with each other. And so own your stuff.
Own your
Um,
stuff.
yeah,
I like it. And then I want to bring in the third one,
go.
which is you could think of a caption for this, but the words are around, think of your team as a family system.
Mm,
How you think about it as a family rather than the individuals in the family. I think that's powerful.
I love it. Brilliant. Georgina, thank you. I appreciate your time today. And I look forward to more interactions and finding ways that we can continue to have this conversation and
Me
help
too.
shape the global dialogue on these topics.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Bennett. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm very up for more conversations as time unfolds.
Wonderful. Thank you.